the theme this month, and I hope you've been thinking about, your own vision or the collective vision of the globe right now. It's an important moment. Uh, this is the theme that we get from headquarters, but feel free to make it your own, because things are special when you make them your own. How do you see the world? How do you want it to change? Vision refers to both the sense of sight and our ability to imagine the future. We're focused on the little details, but can you see the big picture? You are your own visionary. What do you want to see? So we have a visionary today that's going to be speaking on the theme of vision and also piggybacking off of her recent TED Talk about the unresume. Yeah, make some noise for that TED Talk. I've known Jasmine maybe for about 5 years. She's recently been recognized as the top 50 women of influence in technology by the San Diego Business Journal. She received her BSE in Aerospace Engineering from the University of Michigan and an MSE in Interdisciplinary Engineering as well, and her MBA from Indiana. She's currently working at Collins Aerospace. She is the co-founder and executive director of Greater Than Tech, a nonprofit dedicated to cultivating the next generation of tech leaders by immersing girls and underdeserved students in STEM and business. And she is a native of Flint, Michigan. She has a passion for education, business, and community-driven work. So please give a round of applause for Jasmine LeFlore.
Thank you, Ramel, and everyone here today taking time out to come to the library and see me and Ramel chat.
Oh yeah, this is fun. I get to play Oprah a little bit. How's your morning going?
Good. It's a little foggy today, so a little chilly. I'm like, that's different. I live down the street, so it was easy to get here. I work from home. I am in this neighborhood a lot, so everything was pretty chill. I see some familiar faces and friends, so good.
Right. Okay, so let's jump into it. You just did your TED Talk.
TEDx.
Oh, so you just did your TEDx. Let me get it right, because the titles of things matter. The titles of things matter. How are you feeling after that?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so after the TEDx talk, and the difference between TED and TEDx is that TEDx is community-driven, community-led, so TEDx San Diego is specific here. I was super surprised to see that opportunity fall into my lap. I was like, oh my gosh, this seems really cool, but I literally changed my mind about everything all the time. I was like, what do I want to tell the world on a stage, So it was really emotionally difficult for me to go back through some things that I experienced in college and maybe some I'll say indoctrination, growing up of what I was told I needed to do to be successful. So the entire experience of going through recounting stories, thinking about why I'm here today was very emotionally draining. But at the same time, I feel like it challenged me to rise to the occasion. And more than anything, I kind of blew past a lot of the milestones that you needed to have. It's very specific, have your idea by this date, have your talk finished. There's a speech editor who will help you. So there are certain milestones that you need to do this, and everything through in that process. I was living the unresume as I was preparing it. So I felt I don't know what I'm doing. I was ready to just quit the whole thing. And honestly, when I got on that stage, I was literally still editing right before I got on stage. So a lot of that was just kind of off the cuff in a way. And I looked at the whole thing if nothing else, like this is a testimony of like my experience when I was like 18 to 22. And like, I just put that on stage to like kind of, ode to that journey of like, this was my path in college, and that was what came out. So it's
Oh,
kind of
wow.
everywhere.
And you talked about this concept of the unresume. And so some people know what that is, some people don't. You mentioned unwavering resilience in the talk,
Yes.
but can you explain what the
Yeah,
unresume is?
so I was in a leadership program called Rise San Diego. I think there's a couple Rise fellows in the crowd right now. And that was my first time being in a leadership program where I started learning from people who were talking about their personal experiences. I think a lot of leadership programs we learn about kind of like how to be more effective and like communicate and do certain things in a very like office-centric way. And that program was more about like the inner work. So I remember sitting in a activity called a spiral and hearing stories from people who honestly, like titles wise, they were very dope, but I didn't know their titles at the time, but I felt like I saw and heard their heart. And I was just thinking like, I'd rather work with people who I can relate to and I have a shared value with, instead of like people who probably have the funny titles, but we don't really connect in a meaningful way. So I just thought about like all the things people go through that may not necessarily show up on their resume that also makes them like a great candidate, a great leader, a great person to work with, and how that could be recognized and more seen as how we work together.
Nice. So to talk about titles, I mean, you've done so much, and after the TED Talk, I even called you. I said, "Oh, you're an interdisciplinary entrepreneur." And you're like, "Whoa." So people are like giving you these titles. You're also a scientist as well.
Mm-hmm.
But the Jasmine that we see today, like, how important are titles for you, and who are you as this person today that has been
Yeah.
through the dreams that you've accomplished from childhood
Yes.
through college?
Thank you for that. And I love that the theme is vision because I feel like I had a very clear vision when I was 14, like, I'm gonna be an aerospace engineer, nobody can tell me nothing. And now I'm at a space in my life where I'm like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't know like all the steps anymore. So when it comes to titles, I'm like, I feel like it's human being first. Like, I think a lot of people are excited when they get to like see me or hear about me, like when they hear rocket scientist. And because I am in multiple rooms, like I still work at Collins, so I am with very specific technical experts, and like there's a certain title for this and that and that. And I work with kids, I work in the community, so I had a mentor at one point that said, stop saying aerospace engineer, say rocket science, because a lot of people didn't know what aerospace engineering was. I was like, okay. So now I see that like the title rocket science is like, oh, that's cool. And then, there's this joke like, it's not rocket science. So, for what it's worth, I'm like, that's actually one subject matter. Like, that doesn't mean I actually know everything. So now I'm like, I'm rebranded to a human being. Call me a human being that likes tech and music and community.
I love that. It's full circle. What was your vision as a child? Like, what was your childhood vision?
Yeah, I tell this story. I've been on a few podcasts, but I am originally from Flint, Michigan. I lived in the flight path of an airport, so I always saw planes like flying over my head. My mom was an educator, and I remember asking her like, how do planes fly? And she said, maybe one day you'll have a job where you can answer that question. So I always was like a tinkerer kid, doing puzzles with my grandma, taking things apart. I also loved playing school after school. So big nerd education energy, right? So I feel like school was like fun to me. Like I did robotics, I did all the things they say you should do when you want to do engineering. So I was like very involved with extracurricular activities. I also did like dance and music, things like that. So the vision was very clear because someone just said, oh, you can do that. And then when it came to the actual journey, there were just a lot of hardships. The TEDx talks about that more. And I feel that my like socialization and like indoctrination as a kid was like, you know, go to school, get a good job, work hard, work hard. And at a young age, I was told I was smart. So when I was like in college, the moments I felt like I wasn't smart, I was like, wait a minute. What do you mean I didn't get a good grade on this, you know? So there was this like inner talk and also these outward facing influences like counselors, teachers who were looking at me like, you came from this school, what do you mean you're trying to do all that? So having to like turn I gotta work hard for this, I gotta do this, to like, okay, I can do it. And I'm not listening to the people who I felt had my best interests at heart. So it was kind of a really difficult, like, I'm smart, I'm supposed to work hard, and I just got to keep going. And that was a lot of ways how I got to this space.
That's incredible and like encouraging to hear, especially you have like big brothers, big sisters here talking about how important it is to have a mentor. Because listening to your talk, and we talked about this before,
Yeah.
I was like, where did you build that type of resilience where someone tells you no and you joyfully say, you know, no, just can you do it a little bit, or like open the door a little bit? Like, how did you get that? And the fact that it's people encouraging you, telling you that you're smart, or like reflecting you back to yourself, that was so powerful.
Yeah, I'm very grateful that, like, I don't know if anyone's ever heard, like, the age 0 to 7 is where kids absorb the most information, and, like, you know, that's basically where, like, their brains are being wired. So I felt like 0 to 7 for me was, like, very, you know, positive, encouraging. The years after that, I felt like was very, you know, traumatic in a lot of ways. So back to Unresume, I felt that I endured some things, like as a child, like I lived in a women's shelter, you know, for a period of time. So I remember maybe in 5th grade, I was thinking like, okay, I never want to be in this environment. So if the narrative is go to school, get a good job, I need to figure out how to do that so I don't end up here. And I felt that, you know, being in situations like that made me want to like, okay, I don't care what this counselor says, I'm gonna figure this out. So there's like this level of like resilience that was innate because of the environments I was in, but I feel like the passion and the love started with like, you know, I like planes, I like building stuff, and I was encouraged at a very young age that like I could do it. So there's this like juxtaposition of love and then like fear.
Oh, wow. Because people will call me creative sometimes, and really in the back of my head, I'm thinking, well, I was really trying to survive a lot of moments.
Yeah.
And the byproduct was creativity, but survival was right there next to it.
Yeah. You asked me something about like the Unresume, and I did want to mention that, you know, with the journey of, you know, the rules, like, there's certain GPAs, there's certain things you're supposed to have on your resume to get into certain rooms. So I've always been a naturally like inquisitive person as a kid. I still am. I probably would rebrand myself to master question asker. And
Bar.
then I started asking questions about like, okay, I didn't have the right GPA and things like that. So I remember asking like, is this a rule or a recommendation? So then I started like unlocking more.
Say it again.
Like, you know, sometimes we're conditioned and indoctrinated to think like you have to do this, this, and this. And then when you start asking more in-depth questions, it's like, wait a minute, who made this up? Who came up with this? Is this a recommendation? Is this a hard no, you know? So.
Is this a rule or is this a recommendation? It's probably a recommendation most of the time. So we have a lot of creatives that are in this room.
Yes.
You're a rocket scientist, but you've also been involved in dance, and it sounds like acting as well. How do you bridge the gap between creativity and rocket science, where people may see that as separate?
So I feel that creativity is like literally anything. You know, the way you dress is creative. Like anything that's like your flair, your way of processing and going about something is creativity to me. I'm gonna keep it as simple as like I work at a big aerospace company. A lot of what I do is portfolio management for applied research and technology projects. So things that will be on aircraft in the next 20 years, and a lot of it is technology demos, technology development. So how do we go from like this type of material and mature it? Like what tests do it need to undergo for it to improve and actually be certifiable? And something as simple as my manager would send an email to everyone like, hey, do this, this is the date. And I'm more of a like, okay, I will send everyone a Teams message in different ways. I'm gonna speak to people's listening, and I realized that my manager would take like a week to get something done, and I'm like, I'm just about to hit him up over here, hey, and I'll get it done in like 2 days, and that was like a creative way of like getting the same thing done. So that's as simple as just how you get things done, how you actually like care to interact with people, and like what is your format of like, I want to see it this way. So I don't think rocket science and creativity are like mutually exclusive. I think creativity is embedded in like everything we do.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, thanks.
I feel like a lot of people see vision as something that is static.
Yeah.
Are you constantly editing your vision, and what does that look like?
Yes. I mean, honestly, I'm gonna go back to technology because nerd. I remember talking to this one guy who was working on like a prototype, and he was saying to me, his peers or his manager said, well, what are you gonna do when it fails? And that to me is like a very static way of thinking of things. Technology, like it has to be developed and people evolve as well. So like when we think about, things being static, it's like, wait a minute, that was just a moment in time. It can also transform into something else. The unresume even was like something that came from a concept through Rise. I started talking about it with the students I work with at Greater Than Tech. We were sharing our stories about our unresumes, and then I like transposed it or like, moved it from a conversation with just students to a conversation with hiring managers, where it's how do you like essentially revitalize this concept to do something else. So I think everything is iterative. I think when you look at something as a moment in time, it's like that was at, that time, 9:46 a.m. And then at 10 a.m., it's like, oh, wait, this is a totally different thing. But I think we just have to like do the thing, even if we don't really know what we're doing. I feel like that's where I'm at in life right now. And yeah, everything can evolve and grow. So I think it's static black and white thinking when it's just like, oh, that was it, I'm done. It's like, no, you can keep picking something up, look at it again, and get inspired by it in a different way.
I love how you look at that, and just going back to the talk, it makes me think about how you're saying things are not static. And you're not only asking people to move around where they're at, but you're asking structures to change as well.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're telling people, like, recognize your own unresume,
Yeah.
but you're telling the managing hirers to recognize the unresume as well. What is that balance that you see for us to change, but us to, demand and encourage structures to change as well?
Ooh, that is a really good question. I mean, I don't have a solid answer to it. I will say that the whole concept of yes and, both and, like, there are some things that are put in place that are positive and can be impactful and like help people. When I see like mentorship programs, like I do think resumes have a place in the world where, yeah, you want to know what people have done in a professional manner. So I'm not saying like rip the resume up, but at the same time, like I feel like we can go back to, you know, pre 400 years ago, where it's like there were women doing labor that was unpaid, and that was work. And, you know, is that a skill set that they could be like, okay, I'm good at this, but it wasn't recognized. So I think even, you know, volunteer work, like what people do just out of love, like sometimes they're not necessarily seeing that as a skill. They're seeing it as just like, oh, that's just what I do for fun. I mean, in a lot of ways, that's how Greater Than Tech became a thing. And I'm like, oh, this is like my passion project. And I see the impact now from a lot of students we work with. And I'm like, oh, I was just doing the thing. So I think there's this both and effect of, I don't know if we need to abolish every single thing, but I do think there are a lot of things that need like strong improvements, like systems. I'm gonna point to public education. That's kind of where my heart is right now. So that is something that hasn't been revolutionized. And I think right now we're at a very interesting and critical point where I see how Gen Alpha and students in middle school and high school, they're extremely savvy, technically speaking, and there's a lot we can learn from them. So I'm ready to see more like conversations that, you know, are based in like the human aspect and not always just this top-down approach. But I acknowledge some things that are top-down are like probably work decent. Like I don't think the resume needs to go, but I do think that people need to be acknowledged for the things that aren't necessarily considered professional. Like it's still work.
Yes, I love that. That's perspective right there. There's a balance. There's a balance to things. And to talk about the youth and the different outlets say that education isn't providing, you could do things like Greater Than Tech.
Yes, we can do things like Greater Than Tech. For those not familiar, so Greater Than Tech is a nonprofit or public benefit organization I started with my co-founder, Dr. Brittany Wheeler. She's also an engineer. And we were robotics instructors for a middle school girls team. And we just saw how like engineering could be used in other ways outside of like competitions and how it could be applied to the real world on top of the aspect of adding entrepreneurial learning. Back to like my story and how I came to San Diego, the word entrepreneurship was like a bad word for like, you don't have a real job. So, you know, I had that like indoctrination of like, okay, go to school, get a good job, that's it. And, you know, then my world started evolving and I started seeing like the benefits of entrepreneurship. And I think with Greater Than Tech, teaching kids about STEM and entrepreneurship together gives them a greater lens on how they can use technology for good. But also, I feel like I took pride in it because with Greater Than Tech, that was the first time I felt like I could be a decision maker in a kid's life, where traditionally, you know, at Collins Aerospace, there are hire managers and executives who make like that top-down decision of like who gets in. And I felt that I was at career fairs. Students would come see me, they would show me their resume, but I didn't have power to like actually help them get a job. And with Greater Than Tech, something I kind of put together, just, you know, frustrated with how I saw certain things. Now we're able to give college students their first technical job experience, and they can get like a different job in tech after that. So the unresume kind of like at least gives them some ability to like talk about the things that they don't see as professional all the time or like not recognized. You know, I know a lot of students who they have to work and they may not be able to get the big internship while they're in college. Like they're taking care of their siblings, they're taking care of the home, and the big girl internship may not be within reach for them. So at least with Greater Than Tech, that was the first time I'm like, oh, I'm a decision maker in this seat. Like at Collins, I was able to be a face, but not necessarily like help somebody in a meaningful way for me. So Greater Than Tech allows us to do that. The Unresume allows us to have the conversation about what is work, you know, what you do that you've learned through life that is also valuable and should be recognized.
Thank you so much for answering all those questions, especially so in depth. I've had a great time talking to you on this stage with Creative Mornings and our audience. Is there anything that you want to share before we make our exits?
So I am reading a book called Freedom, Medicine Words for Your Brave Revolution. This was inspired by another Rise Fellow, Horizon Fellow, LA. So as I am like grappling with my own, like, what's my vision? Where do I go next? I'm also painfully aware of like how we may have good intentions, but we might be indoctrinated to go into a certain path. And sometimes like essentially like the slave can become the slave master again. So I'm also constantly like checking my bias and like what I am like essentially telling students they need to do based off like my own conditioning. So if you want to unravel as well, I would recommend that book.
Okay, we unraveling. We unraveling. We can do it together as a community. Maybe 5 years ago, we were in a little room talking about our vision with other entrepreneurs. Years later, you started Greater Than Tech. We both have been evolving as people. And I appreciate to be able to see your vision grow from there and to be in these communities where we see each other's visions grow and see how impactful it is just to see the framework. Makes me believe in myself that bit more. And it's so appreciative just how you lay things down and express yourself in this dualistic way where it's like, I appreciate where you come from, Flint, Michigan, which is like you made it from the trenches. People be saying they started from the bottom. They didn't make it from the mud. You made it from the mud to where you're at. And it's a beautiful thing to see. How you affect the youth that you work with Greater Than Tech is amazing, and how you explain that. And I just want you to give you your flowers and let you know that I appreciate you, the community appreciates you. After watching your talk, I was like, yo, I gotta send this to my little sister type of vibe, so she can just get inspired and so she can have a vision that she wouldn't have had before seeing it. And I appreciate you coming here to share your story and experiences with us. And thank you so much. You're gonna send us off into a great weekend. And I hope y'all can take this vision that Jasmine has shared with us today. Please give her a round of applause and thank you so much for coming to Creative Mornings.
Thank you, Ramel.